And we're live. Well, welcome back everyone to the HVAC 2.0 show. Today we got T and Ronnie with us, going a little bit of a short crowd today. So, how's everybody doing?
Slow season.
That it is.
Absolutely. Doing fine, but 70 degrees.
Yeah. Yep. Of all the things that are broken, people don't want to fix or replace, and wait until it gets cold, and then everybody's going to want to do it all at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah, I have a couple projects that they're actually taking their time trying to figure out what they want to do. And some of that's because the temperature is they have a pretty good idea, but again, they're just kind of, setting on their money for now, I guess.
Yeah, yeah,
No sense of urgency.
yeah.
Yeah.
I've got a few of those as well, where went out, compressor's dead, old unit needs to replace, and they're like, okay, yeah, well, let's get a price. And then they're just kind of dragging their feet slowly because they were like, well, if it does get cold, like, can we have some form of heat? And I'm like, yeah, you do have heat strips, but it's going to cost quite a bit to run. They're like, oh, okay, well, at least we have something. And I knew then, I was like, I'm not going to hear back from them for a little while.
Right.
I've got a couple that's doing that right now.
It's not going to cost them all that much if it's 55 degrees, but
oh yeah,
if it gets to 40, you're going to be spinning your meter pretty quick.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're not going to be paying attention to that. They're going to wait until it's 2 months ahead of time, and then
until they get a big bill.
Yeah, and it's like, what's this bill so high for? Well,
yeah, a couple of my jobs, I've gave them promotional discounts that expire on certain days. So if they go outside, like the November 22nd, I have some promotions expiring that I've put out there. And, I usually call them and follow them up and let them know that, hey, or shoot them a message. Just a friendly reminder that this promotional period expires on the 22nd. We intend to get busy. We're actually scheduled out several days right now on installation, which I'm surprised. I filled our last Wednesday spot earlier today. Generally speaking, we're like, when it's 70 degrees, we're clawing at it to try to get stuff, scheduled.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah.
Does the client understand that part of the reason for these promotions is because you're not busy and you want to keep the crews busy, and that once it gets busy, not only is their price going to change, but also scheduling might not happen as quickly as they'd like?
My clients for sure understand that. I'm not sure that other ones do. I do have one client that I've said this to them multiple times, but they act like that's not real important to them. And they're
so
like,
in other words, they're like, I don't know what Greek language you're speaking, but I don't understand it, or I'm just
they're like, well, this is the price, ain't it? I'm like, it is, but we're trying to keep people working, and we're losing money to do that to keep them busy, if that makes sense.
We're giving you this killer deal that's sort of a break even for us, and we're not going to have, once we're busy, that killer deal goes away.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We're not going to have any trouble keeping our guys busy. So,
which we're not, again, they're all working. It's close, but we're tomorrow and the day after is scheduled out already. And then tomorrow we'll probably get a few calls, and those go.
So one of the things that this brings up, because you mentioned that you've been called out on a few comfort consults that the people have had no heat, and they said that they didn't want to wait. So we should talk about a free quote conversion from Comfort Consult. Yep. Will you talk about how that works for you?
Yeah, so basically I go out, I talk to them. Generally speaking, we'll talk about converting it to Path A versus Path B. If they have a sense of urgency, like, are you worried about having heat, in the next couple of days, et cetera, or maybe even the next week? Because, it may take us to that time to, to get
the report finished.
Yeah, get the report finished. So I had one client that has not did anything that acted like it was extremely urgent. It's an older lady, huge house, no heat. The day I was at her home, it was pretty cold in her house. I mean, it was probably like 65 degrees. And it's a really big house, and it was getting colder as the day went. So generally speaking, I'll give them both options, and then I'll give them the option of me testing the house, doing like a mix.
So you give them a straight free quote option, as well as a comfort consult conversion.
Yeah, absolutely.
To free quote option.
Because if I'm there, I'm going to say, hey, there's a couple different ways we can go about this. One, we can do the testing. I get your report together. That's going to take about a week. And then we can look at ranges and talk about options from there. And I'll need to come back out and go over all these numbers with you. The second option is we do a path A, which is we still do a report. But basically I'll test your house. I'll do a trued up load, like a legit load calculation on the house. It'll still take me 4 hours to do this. But the difference is I can go ahead and get you pricing if you're concerned about having heat or cooling right away. And then the third option is I can do likely load, and we can just do a straight free quote, and I can refund the $499.
Right. Okay. So 2 options. It still costs $499.
Yep.
One is you're going to get a full comfort consult report, and we'll go through all of the things we discovered. The second one is I'm going to do blower door assisted load calc, and true up to energy use if I have it.
Which I do.
And you can make a decision today, because we can talk about figuring out what are the 6 functions you want, and then pick equipment based on the 6 functions. And then the third is just the free quote process, where I'm going to give you price ranges.
Yeah.
And then
with likely
load. And one of the things that is becoming clear, we had an inclination that we needed to polish the yes, no, maybes in the free quote process.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that needs to get also inserted a little bit into the free quote conversion. I don't know. But when I say polish yes, no, maybes, that's part of the free quote service in helping you get to figuring out the neighborhood of your ideal equipment replacement specification, is coming up with a specification that's within your budget range, without going to a price bid. And then
this lady had an unrealistic budget for the type of equipment she wanted.
Okay.
So again, we went through all the 6 functions, everything. Mentioned that she'd had a system replaced in Pennsylvania before.
Okay.
And 8 to 10 years ago, she had spent $10,000 to $12,000 on that system.
Okay. How big's the house?
I think it was around 4,000 square feet.
One system.
Okay. Had a basement as well, but I think it was like 3,700 above grade.
And you got a blower door?
And I got a blower door on it. Yep.
What was the blower door number?
It was less than 1 to 1. I can't remember right offhand. It was not a
2 to 3,000.
It was a little over 3,000, 3,100, something like that. And that's not including her basement square footage. Which I did the blower door with her basement door open and closed just to see the difference. 3,226 was her number.
Is she intentionally conditioning that basement, or just unintentionally?
Unintentionally.
Okay. So really, it's a 4,000 square foot house, not a 5,000 square foot house.
Yeah, above grade is 3,700, and then the basement is 1,800 square feet or something. It's 1,800 per floor, basically.
Sure, but if that's 60 degrees, she doesn't care.
Yeah, she's okay with that. She doesn't care. Yeah. So also I found it had a 5-ton, 130,000 BTU gas furnace in this house.
Did it have enough ductwork for that?
Has a 4-ton duct system. I did a true flow report, which on anything that I'm doing a blower door on, I'm doing a true flow report on.
Okay.
And indicated that she was under returned and there was a high pressure drop on the filter. And this furnace was on a riser box.
Oh.
Okay. And it still had a high pressure drop on the filter.
Okay.
20 by 25 filter by 1 inch. So I go over all the options, whether we sat down, we look at everything. CO2's high in this house, like 1,500 or something crazy. The day before it was like 1,350. I'm assuming because they put like super nice windows in the house.
Well, no stack effect, probably. The leakage.
No stack effect. The house is pretty tight. I mean, 3226. And again, we're still connected to the basement. It's mostly in the ground, but I mean, there's probably like 24 inches all the way around the house above grade for the basement.
Okay.
And it had windows in the basement. And then again, it had a lot of the stack heads, so a lot of ductwork going up walls, so a lot of connection to the basement through those wall cavities. In fact, I found one of those stack heads when I went down in the basement. Insulation was coming out of the where the wall stack ran up to the upstairs. So there's some thermal bypass, some type of connection
going to the attic
through that.
Okay.
Yeah, which her dad's he's pretty handy. He's a architectural engineer or something. He's supposed to be fixing that with some spray foam.
Okay. So it was worth it for her to. It would have been probably worth it for her to stay with the comfort consult, since she wasn't really going to make the decision quickly, even though she got anxious.
Well, she got anxious, and at the time it was mild, so I assumed I would get some work faster for our company too.
Okay, right.
So it was beneficial for both of us to do it quicker. But then, I talk about budget, and she's like, "Well, I would think this would be around $12,000." And then I started giving ranges, and I said, "Well, there is a $12,000 option, but it's single speed equipment."
Which is what she has,
and which is what's there. No fresh air, but after talking, like fresh air is a must. Like the dad. So, and this lady's probably 60. Her dad's probably 80 or something. Once we went through everything, I sat down and went through all of it with her. And
I want to read Jason Trammell's here.
I see it.
Jason, you can jump in if you want. He's probably got his whole family around.
She claimed that he was handy though. So
yeah, right.
So again, she calls him on speakerphone, and we sit down, and I go through all of it with him on the phone, go through all the options, and then I had multi-speed made a lot of sense to her because the upstairs was a couple of degrees difference, and she wanted to try to. Originally, she talked about zoning.
Oh my God! So she's really got all kinds of champagne.
Well, she had a house that was zoned before, So, so we go through all these options, and I talked to her. Basically, I said, "Well, if we zone your house, we're going to have to redo your entire duct system in the basement." So all the supply runs will stay, but all the supply ductwork, the main trunk lines, we'll have to tear the 2 trunk lines out and put 4 in. So you're looking at a big expense there, and then you're looking at 4 zone dampers. So I mean, it's not going to be a cheap thing to do it.
Right.
So you would add a substantial amount of money to the job. And she said, "Well, that's I don't think it's that big of a deal. I'm the only one in the house, but I would like to."
How does she have high CO2?
I have no idea.
She's the only one in the house. A lot of
plants in the house.
Or no, plants wouldn't do that.
No, plants would lower CO2.
Yeah.
No, but it was really high, and the technician ran his air device the day before, and it was high on his as well. And I put this in a room nobody was in.
Huh.
Ran it in a room nobody was in, so ran it in the kitchen. So basically, go through all the options. The dad kept calling it makeup air, but was saying that he thinks that she should have makeup air in her house if her CO2 is that high. She's also had blood tests done, and her CO2 levels are high in her blood. I told her I didn't know if that had any relation to that. That could be a medical issue that you're having. But she does have some lung issues she has like long COVID or whatever. So she does have some concerns with her lung health. Okay.
So this sounds like her being a conversion would have made total sense.
Absolutely.
She made a decision that day.
I agree. I did follow up with her on Friday, and I did tell her, I said, we do have a promotional discount because I'm trying to get some spots.
Keep the crews busy.
Keep the crews busy. And I said, these promotional discounts are good until the 22nd. She's like, well, I'm in Ohio. We're doing Thanksgiving early because a lot of her family just couldn't make actual Thanksgiving work. So I will review them Monday, Tuesday, and that sounds good, blah, 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 blah. She did get some other prices. She said I was $3,000 higher than the other companies. And I said, did the other companies have, makeup air? And she said one of them, but it was only $800. It wasn't $3,200. And I said, well, I do have an option. I talked to you about just doing a scuttle, but you mentioned your lung condition. So the ventilator that I'm putting on your house has a MERV 16 HEPA filter in it because you felt like that was a better fit for your house than the one without the filter. And
right, and this clearly suggests that being last to bid
would have been the way to go for sure. But she had no indication that she was getting any other bids until her ideal specification fell outside of her budget.
Right.
And again, she still said she's going to pay for this straight up. She's not financing this or none of that kind of stuff. She has the money to do it. Is the way
she's just emotionally attached to a budget that was unreasonable.
Absolutely. And I've explained all that to her. She also mentioned that everybody else quoted her 5-ton systems rather than 4-ton systems. And I quoted her a 90,000 BTU furnace, and they quoted her 130s like she has, and somebody quoted her a 120. And I asked her, how did they come to the conclusion that she needed that size? And she said, well, they had told her they had never put a system that small, a 4-ton, in a home that big.
Right. Right. So preparing people for an understanding of, look, if this is your ideal specification, you're really going to need to make sure that they bid to your ideal specification.
Yeah. Which they have no interest in quoting her a 4-ton. So,
in which case they're just disqualified because this is the specification. I mean, she's writing the check. She's making the spec.
Yeah. But so again, I asked her how they come to that conclusion and asked her if they had done a load calculation on the home. And
or
she
a blower
said
door.
When she said, well, I had mentioned the load calculation that you had done to them, and they just didn't understand how you got to that number. And they also,
of course they don't. They never do load calc. So how would they know how you got to any? They wouldn't know how to get to a number if they bit them in the nose.
They also mentioned that they were working on a load calculation for her, and they would get back to her on that. And I asked her.
So we're guessing, but we're going to go do a calculation and make the numbers match our guess.
100%. And I did mention, I said, well, you have to be really careful with people doing that because I said, you've seen how I changed those numbers, but I changed those numbers. I did that load in your home. Like I actually went to the windows and measured the window. I did all that stuff. Like And she's like, yeah, I know you did a whole lot more than anybody else did. You know, and I said, there's a reason, you know, we do what we do. And in situations like this, where you're uncomfortable and all this stuff, I said, we try to build an ideal specification so you have best odds of success. And then if you can't get, you know, exactly where you need to be, you can always improve your house. And she's like, yeah, I understand
what your dad's going to do for you. Your dad's going to improve your house because you got a bunch of bypass going to the attic.
100%. And by the way, she said she'd had a bunch of attic work, like $7,000-8,000 worth of attic work done a year ago.
Nice. Nice. They did a blow and go without any air sealing.
100%. Yeah, they charged her $7,000 for fiberglass is what it sounded like to me.
Ooh. That stuff looks really nice in her basement now. No wonder she's got breathing problems. She's got fiberglass blowing all around her house.
I explained that too. And then I said, I'm happy to take the fresh air off, but you know,
or just do the scuttle.
Or just do the scuttle. And I mentioned all that. And I said, we could get you down at that price range where you want to be. I said, we can do a single speed unit and, you know, let it rip. And she's like, I really don't want a single stage unit. And then I said, well, if you don't
what did they bid?
Well, they built her single speed, and then they built her bids on like a 2 or 3 speed variable. I'm assuming that's a Linux based on, and I was like, is that a Linux or something? She's like, it may be. That sounds.
Or is it a Ream?
I don't know. I said, does it sound like apples to apples?
It's very, it just, the more you talk about this, the more important it is to offer that, by the way, this is a service that we're going to actually come out and review. You give us the opportunity to be last bid. We're going to review the bids of these other guys because there are probably some jamoke bids going on and corner cutting. Like, are they replacing the line set? Are they testing it for acid? Are they, are they going to purge it?
I'm happy to come out. We can go over all the bids together. If you would like, you can call your dad and I can explain all them to my quote and their quote. Just let me review them. So you don't have to show me the numbers. You can black the numbers out. I don't care about the numbers.
Right. Yeah. So my numbers are going to be my numbers. I can't.
Yeah. So she seemed like that she might be interested in that. And she's like, she kept saying, well, I have, until January to make this decision. I was like, well, the promotional discounts you're getting are not valid until January, but that is fine if you want to wait until then.
How can she wait till Jan? I thought she was in a big hurry and she's got no heat.
That's what I said.
How's she going to heat the place till January?
Yeah, I think it's a money thing. I think she has to move some money around or something is what I think's going on. She's just not forthcoming with it or whatever. So I also told her I could finance it, no interest, or we could charge her one of her cards.
What is she doing in a house that size with no heat?
I have no idea. That's a good question to ask, I guess. So I did that one. Then I had another one. I sat down with them and they, I actually went about it a little differently because of that other call.
Okay.
I sat down with them. I went over everything. They gave me their ideal specification. They settled on part of it now, and they're going to do part of it later. And they did what they had to do to get their new furnace in there. And basically, their water heater was in the way. We had to pull it and put it back in. They opted to do a high-efficiency tankless heater to save space. And then basically we're able to pull the furnace and replace the furnace without it being in the way. And then we can do the outdoor unit later. They actually opted to do fresh air in this house rather than doing the outdoor unit now. Because their CO2 is high in their home as well. They have concerns of allergies. Everybody in the house has allergies. One has asthma. They have triple pane windows in their house.
Oh, geez.
Super efficient windows. They're oversized a ton. So they have a 3-ton. They need a 2-ton. And then we're going from an 80 to a 60,000 furnace. And we're doing a modulating furnace in the house.
Okay.
So we're going to do a mod furnace, fresh air, and they're going to wait on the heat pump because they want to wait for the new refrigerant. One of the reasons, because it has a lower GWP is what they actually, these are very liberal women, which
right. So they're all about saving. They're going to save the planet by
for the greater
delaying the heat pump, but they're still going to have a gas furnace.
Yeah, but they're looking at like it's a high efficiency, 97%. So they're
okay.
But I agree. I'm again, it's flawed logic.
It's like buying a hybrid RAV4.
Yeah.
Okay.
But again, that's going in tomorrow. The water heater is, and then the day after we're doing the.
So you modified your sales approach with them. How?
Well, when I got all the numbers, I sat down with them.
Was this a free quote, or was this a
comfort? This is a comfort consult.
It was a full comfort consult. Okay.
I did the full comfort consult other than sending them the report. So I sat down with them after completing the comfort consult in home. I did all the questionnaire. When it came time to budget talk and all that, I sat down with them and I said, generally speaking, I would build your report, and this time next week, I would have a report to you with some ranges. From there, we would
narrow in
and get what you're wanting to do. But I feel like there's a sense of urgency because I've heard you all mention when we were talking that you're concerned about not having heat and you have small children in the house.
Okay.
Am I mistaken, or does that sound right? And they said, no, you're absolutely correct. We need heat as soon as possible, and we don't think we can wait a week for a report. I said, well, if you're willing to make a decision today, I'm willing to sit down and I'll give you the basics to the best. I'll give you it with this, without that. I'll sit down here as long as it takes to find out what you want to do. We'll go over all the numbers together. If you have the time, it'll probably take about an hour. Does that sound okay? And they were like, absolutely. Let's get this done. We want to have this on the schedule before you leave today.
So Ronnie's making micro contracts at every step and closing the compartment door on each little micro contract.
That's really good.
We did a Navian tankless 97% efficient water heater. We did an MN7. There's no room to put a 4-inch media in this closet because of just room and space, etc. So we're going to do like a 1-inch. They call it a capture filter, but it has like the MERV pressure drop of a MERV 8 filter, but it has filtration of a MERV 13 filter. And it's like an electrostatic 1-inch with a low pressure drop. It's not like a Respicare. It's similar to Respicare, but without the pressure drop issues. And then it's made by Premier, I believe, is the company that actually manufactures it. And then Infinity Control, we're going to reuse their oversized 3-ton air conditioner for now. And it was right under 20 grand. So they had a $20,000 budget.
Gotcha.
So, and I gave them other options that were less money. And they were like, you know what, rather than going with the 60% efficient water heater or going with an electric water heater that's going to be in the way if we ever had to do anything again in the future, because they actually had a plug, like a receptacle in the wall behind the water heater. We could have put an electric tank water heater in there. I said, you have a circuit here for it. We can slam it right in there, whatever you want to do. And they were like, no, we think the tankless makes more sense because of the space. You never have to, if we ever have to pull the furnace or change the coil, the water heater doesn't have to come out. So they opted to do that. And they said, we'd like the idea of being able to fill our tubs up without running out of hot water. So, because, take baths and all that fun stuff. So, So again,
they didn't feel so. Asking the questions, I think on free quote, instead of not going direct at it and hoping that you're going to get somebody who doesn't want to go get other bids, going straight at it and saying, we know people generally are going to want different bids. And usually with this free quote process, we're getting people to think about a whole lot of things that they never thought about before. So a lot of times people really need to sleep on it anyway. And it's not a bad idea. So if you're not in a hurry, we'll build you this ideal specification. And we've given you all this education. And so what's the pivot you come up with, Ronnie, for asking for creating a sense of reciprocity?
So when I'm asking questions, I'll conversate with them, and like, I'm not just there asking questions. I like have conversations with them and talk to them and try to be, befriend them, so to speak, and just try to get some information out of them. And in this case, I actually overheard them like, well, we got to have heat. We got to figure something out. Like, they both work from home. So one of the ladies was saying to her wife that, hey, do you have a minute? Yeah, I'll make a minute because we got to have heat. I'll let work know that this is urgent and we need to get it figured out. I actually gave them the option to pull the water heater the day after to get the heat on, but they would have to wait until Tuesday to have hot water, and they didn't like that idea. So they mentioned that they would use an electric heater for a few days since it wasn't going to be terribly cold to get them by.
Sure, but was there another situation where you were talking to people and you asked them a couple of times how were you really were you hoping to make a decision today, or did you want to think this over a little bit or get other quotes?
Well, so some people, I try to talk to them about that up front. Some people don't want to wait on estimates. Some people are okay with it. I think the people that aren't okay with waiting are generally trying to show your numbers to other people, maybe to try to get better pricing. And
I think if you say, well, we're going to help you really come up with your ideal specification, but what we found is we really need to have your final specification to bid to, because I don't want to be making 18 different bids.
Yeah. And then I basically what I'll do is I'll give them a price, and I'll give them like a little bit of a little discount or something. And I usually don't give them like a final price. I just, in some cases, in fact, I actually gave a range. So for instance, I went out on a furnace only quote, and they also wanted quotes on air conditioners, but had no intention of replacing the air conditioner until later on next year, or maybe even later if it runs longer. So in that situation, I was their last estimate. I gave them pricing on furnaces. I sat down and talked to them about different options, all this and that and other. They really wanted something basic to mid-range. They didn't want anything super high-end. Other companies were talking about high-efficiency gas furnaces, as some of them weren't high-efficiency because they were more basic high-efficiency furnaces. I don't understand why you would try to manipulate somebody to think their 92% efficient furnace is not a high-efficiency furnace. And they already had
maybe make them feel bad about it for some reason. I mean,
well, they were trying to talk them up to a 96 or a 97 is what it seemed like to me. And they had some sales guys really trying to hard sell them. She even said that guy's sitting here for like 30 minutes waiting for me to make a decision, just like uncomfortably. And I said, it doesn't make any sense to do that. And I gave them our best price, knowing that we were doing multiple quotes, explained what we were doing versus what they were doing. Said any of the options you make are good. They're all more efficient than the furnace that you have. And in terms of the air conditioner, given prices on that exact numbers right now doesn't make a lot of sense, but your range is probably $6,000 to $10,000, I would imagine, based on the size of your unit and what your looking to put back in the house. You know, a lot of them were telling her she needed a bigger air conditioner too. Had a 2.5 ton, saying that she needed a 3 ton. And I was just like, why are they saying that? And they're like, well, on hot days it doesn't keep up. And I asked her if she'd had it serviced in the last few years, and we hadn't had it serviced in 10 years probably. I'm like, well, maybe it just needs cleaned, you know? And but after we were done, I didn't end up giving a pricing on air conditioning at all.
And they didn't need it, did they? Because it's the wrong.
Didn't need it.
A lot of times you give price too early. All it does is it creates confusion. People need a range so that they can start thinking about whether or not it's reachable. But they don't need a price. They don't need a price 100%. Really until they're ready to make a decision. And if you're helping them build their ideal specification, they should be focusing on the specification. And if they're going to be talking to other people, the specification you give isn't their ideal specification because it might change. They might hear some other ideas that they like, that they want to include, or they may sleep on it and decide that they don't need 5 stages. They only need 2.
They were also quoting 80,000 BTU furnaces on a 1,500 square foot home.
Oh, Jesus.
And I don't care how leaky the house is. I mean, you could leave the windows open and heat it with a 60 probably.
Yeah, right. Right. Plus, do you have ductwork for an 80, or are you going to be burning up your ECM and your heat exchanger prematurely?
Oh, 100%. So I quoted her 60s, different 60s, even though everybody else quoted her 80s.
Right.
And I asked her, I said, if you want an 80, I'll quote you an 80. But, you know, I mean, you probably need 30, 40,000 BTUs of heat in this house. I mean, like they're like, well, it's not insulated very well. And I said, I get that. And I was like, you can leave your windows open all year with that 80 and, you know, still heat the house. So,
yeah.
And this house had new windows in it. So a lot of people are replacing their windows. I don't know who the heck's convincing everybody to put new windows in their house, but they're doing it.
Impressive.
So I quoted her those. She said my prices weren't bad. The only thing that she would need to do is convince her husband that they could actually, because they have a cracked heat exchanger, but they actually been running the furnace occasionally, but she's not comfortable with running it. The husband said he just wanted to buy CO detectors and run the furnace is what she told me while it was there. And she's like, I have dogs in here and stuff and this and that. I said, yeah, and those CO2 detectors or the CO detectors are not low level CO detectors. So unless you buy some really expensive ones. So
yeah, you don't need to go buy 3 or 4 inexpensive CO detectors. Just come home and see if your dog is dead.
Yeah.
That'll save you money on both sides. You save on dog food.
Oh yeah.
I also asked her if there's anything she could change about the system. What would that look like? And she's like, well, this drain drains in the floor all the time. And in fact, nobody's asked me that, Ronnie, except for you. But, you know, really, if I could get this water not to drain the floor, that'd be great. I was like, why don't we put a condensate pump on and pump it right over to your washing machine that's right over here by the furnace? And then you don't have water in the floor. She's like, yeah, my dog comes in here and tries to drink that water. And I'm sure if it's coming out of the gas furnace, that's not water that dog needs to be drinking, right? And I'm like, no, sure ain't. Sure ain't water that dog should be drinking. So, again, she really liked my specifications or our specifications we put together and said that nobody had asked her questions. They basically just came, gave her prices on furnaces, was really pushy. And she was going to need to finance this, period. You know, so she'd like to do a same as cash option, but if she has to do it another way, she's fine with that too. You know, so air conditioner 6 years newer than the furnace, but it was still really old. And I was like, well, that's fine. If you don't want an air conditioner right now, I'm not going to force you to buy one because if I do that, you're not going to buy anyway. So I haven't closed that one, but I'm supposed to talk to her tomorrow. And I was there Friday evening.
Okay.
So she would like to do something sooner than later. So
yeah,
but I think she'll buy a furnace I think she'll buy a mid-range furnace from me. I think she'll buy like a single or 2 speed 96 is what she's going to end up getting. Just because she just kept saying she didn't want to buy the cheapest furnace. So there's nothing wrong with that furnace. I said, if you're trying to get by cheap, just buy the basic furnace. If you want something better, if you're uncomfortable, you want to maybe have a better blower motor, more control of airflow, then you'd want to buy this furnace. But if you don't want to, then buy the basic one.
Well, yeah, she understands the 6 functions.
Yep.
She's conveyed things that are bothering her, and her biggest pain sounds like water on the floor.
100%, and the cracked heat exchanger. So if she don't have a cracked heat exchanger and don't have water in the floor, she's going to be happy. And nobody else gave her a solution. I mean, there's a water hose coming off the drain and running over to a floor drain in the laundry room that you got to step over. And she said there's been water in the floor for 20 years, and it drives her insane.
Oh, wow.
So.
And nobody even asked the question to find out the biggest pain
point. They probably never even looked at the drain. I said, do you mind showing it to me? And they did. I said, oh, the washer's right here. We just run it over to the washer drain. That would be great. Is that going to be very expensive? I was like, $300. Like pump installed, drain ran, everything. And it's covered under your part and labor warranty with your furnace.
Nice. So, and we've been talking a lot about trying to formalize the free quote process using yes, no, no, maybes, where you take them all the way through building their ideal specification. And then we use a Jason Cecil where you're building value in the education process that's being provided. And at the end, you give them price ranges so that they can narrow in on their ideal specification. And then you give them permission to think it over and get other bids. And then in talking to them about it, say, would you, how do you feel about the service I provided you with today? And they tell you that they appreciate it. They say, do you mind if I ask you for, a good turn? How would you phrase that, Ronnie?
What do you mean for a good turn? Explain that.
Just not a, do me a favor or return the favor. Or,
well, for instance, it just depends on the situation. So, for instance, I had a client that wanted better pricing, and we needed to fill a spot. So I got him better pricing, got that, and then I said, he's trying to schedule out for like a week. And I was like, well, sir, the reason, remember me speaking to you and telling you, we were trying to fill some spots. He said, yeah. I said, could you do me a favor? And he's like, well, what would that be? I said, could you do it this Wednesday instead of next Wednesday? And he's like, you know what, since you met me where I'd like to be at, and, basically his ideal specification was something that was affordable, that was new, it had a decent warranty, and that's what he got. He bought something pretty basic. And he was like, you know what, I will contact work. I'll work from home that day, and then we'll do it this week instead of next week. So I guess that would be a good example. I don't know if that's
well, no, that's helpful, because I'm thinking as you're walking them through, if they show appreciation.
I guess it just depends. It's all situational. So if they show appreciation, in some cases, what I'll do is
just ask them for a favor.
Well, yeah, and then in some cases I'll ask them for a favor, and I was like, well, if you even do go with another company, do you mind just letting me know? And then some of them will say yeah, and then some of them will say yeah, and then they don't reach out to you. But I'll shoot them a text message usually. Then they'll answer. You know what I mean? So.
Right. But so, again, and I'm thinking you get to the end of helping people build their ideal specification, and you ask how they feel about it, and then you say, well, I'm glad you appreciate this. Would you do me a favor?
Yeah.
Would you give me the privilege of being last to bid?
Yeah. And I don't think they'll mind as long as they have a good experience in your visit in most cases.
Yeah, and then I think we need to come up with some narratives on why that's going to be beneficial to them as well. It's because, first of all,
I could tell them, first of all, we could go over your other bids. I mean, you don't have to show me pricing, but we can make sure that you're getting everything that you're getting from us. If it's all apples to apples, because I mean, one company
you wouldn't want to go with a little lower bid and find out that you didn't get what you wanted, that they cut corners.
Exactly,
right?
100%. Which a lot of companies that beat us in price, that's how they beat us, is they cut corners.
Yeah, they didn't replace the line set. They didn't check if they're not going to replace the line set, are they going to check the line set for acid?
They didn't change the pad the unit sets on. They didn't change the service disconnect on the wall. They didn't replace the condensate pump. They put the furnace flat on the floor. It's a 100,000 furnace with a 16 by 25 filter. I mean, there's a lot of stuff companies do, and that's a whole lot easier if it has a 1625 filter there already. Even though it's 100K, we'll just throw it back in the same way it is. Happens all the time. I've actually had clients call me back after they've made a bad decision and then end up 2 years later spending money with us, like a whole lot more too.
Right.
I'm like, well, that was priced 2 years ago. I'm sorry. This is what it is now.
Yeah.
I've replaced a lot of newer equipment, which I wish I could say that's not the truth, but there's a lot of companies put stuff in super messed up. I'm sure it's everywhere too. I'm sure it's wherever Tanner is, wherever you are, etc. Yeah. It's not. I mean, there's a lot of people that have no business doing heating and air conditioning that are doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're best serving people if we give them price ranges at the beginning with their ideal specification. And then we explain to them that we rather not get in a situation where we're having to work up a whole bunch of different bids. And so if they're not sure that this is the ideal specification that they're ready to go with today, you'd like to have the privilege of last bid, which will help. Well, not only, they're going to sleep on things, so they may decide that they do or they don't want certain features after thinking about it. And then they may talk to other people, and other people make suggestions for things that they do or don't want. And so their initial ideal specification may not be their ultimate ideal specification. And what you want to bid to is the ultimate ideal specification.
Or they're the final, yep.
The final specification. And ideally, it'll be the same final specification that the other guys bid to, and therefore you got apples to apples. And
again, I say final rather than ultimate, because they may dial it back a little bit. They may decide there's stuff that was in their original specification that they can live without because of money.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, the budget should get you close enough to know what you're looking at. And then you go figure out your money. And so your specification may change. You think a little bit more about the 6 functions and your specification may change. You're looking at the smiley faces and thinking about the smiley faces, your specification may change. You may decide that you want us to cut some corners. You don't want us to replace the line set.
Yep.
But if you don't want us to replace the line set, we should do an acid test to make sure that you can reuse you don't want acid from your old system going straight and starting to deteriorate your brand new system.
I think it's crazy if somebody wants to shave $400 or $500 off a job to keep a line set, because if we're doing a job, we don't charge. I mean, it's like $400 to $500 usually to do a line set. It's not. I mean, people may say it's crazy because the line set costs $200 or whatever, but
right. But if you lose a job for $500, I would rather. Wouldn't you rather let them keep their old line set if they say that they're willing to keep their old line set? And like, if you're willing to keep your old line set, we could do that.
Yeah, I'll do it kind of this like a package thing of just like cutting out everything that's possible to cut out. So rather than going line item per line item, going, okay, which one do you want to leave off? I'm just like, oh, is price the most important thing to you? And if they're like, yeah, I'm like, okay, so if we start kind of cutting some corners and we just cut all the corners we possibly can, and we're okay with no warranty and we're okay with all these things to get the cheapest price possible, does that sound okay? And if they're like, yeah, then I'm okay. We're going to reuse the line set. We're going to reuse the disconnect. We're going to, if it's a package unit, we're going to reuse the flashing or doghouse, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. And we'll reuse it all. And the price is going to come out probably just a little bit less than what it would have been to have it all done to begin with. But it's like psychologically, if they're going, I'm getting the cheapest thing I possibly can, and this is like a special, yeah, it's like I got the special offer, which they kind of are, because I'm not just going, oh, here's the price for that, type thing. If that's what you want, fine. And sometimes because a little while back, I think I talked about it, of where I did a conversion from gas to electric. It was a heat pump, went from 5 tons to 3 tons. Yeah. And on that one, it started out in the same exact thing of like, what's the cheapest thing possible? And in this situation, it's like, okay, well, if we go like for like, we're going a 5-ton, 120K gas pack, which is going to be your most expensive option of trying to buy one of these. And I'm like, hey, we can get a heat pump that's cheaper. And if we get a smaller one, it's cheaper. And if we reuse some of these things, we can get it cheaper. And then it saves us some money that maybe we can take some of this and, get a good filter. I did kind of an April Air media cabinet for this one, and was able to kind of hit all the high points that was really needed, and still kind of kept it in. I mean, we kept the budget decent, and she felt like she was getting, as cheap as possible. And in a situation, it worked out, and it was all just a psychological game.
It does work out. I had a similar situation, now that you mention it, where I beat the company by $300, and he was like, I want to use my thermostat. I want to keep my filter rack. I want to do all this stuff. He's like, I do want the pad change on the outdoor unit and, the service disconnect. He said, but other than that, you can reuse everything else. He's like, I beat another company by $300, and he took us over them, over $300, which I think is crazy I think we're a better company than that company anyway, so it made sense. It was actually a better deal for him, really, but he was getting like a name brand Linux piece of equipment where I gave him Payne, which is like off-brand carrier, but it doesn't matter. It's all basic. It's all the same. When you're buying basic equipment, you might as well just buy whatever. I mean,
might as well get Goodman.
We can get Payne cheaper than Goodman, so.
Oh, there you go.
So, and we don't got to deal with R32. Goodman's already putting out R32 air conditioners. So, that's the main reason we really changed from our cheap value line from Goodman to Payne, is so we didn't have to do 454 and R32 at the same time. Just because we're so concerned about install mixing that crap up and gassing a 454 unit with R32 or vice versa. We don't need that.
That's like that job that's like that air handler that had the heat pack on it that wasn't supposed to be on it.
Yeah, on the double 20 breaker that we wired a 60 amp 10 kW heat pack into.
Yeah.
And the breaker tripped, and service was like, we don't know why the breaker tripped. Oh, yeah, you got 10 kW in it. We're going to have to run new wire to this furnace. I'm like, well, it's supposed to be a heat pump. It was an AC only situation, and we converted the AC to a heat pump so they would have subsidized heat, because the main floor furnace actually heated that space, but it just wasn't as warm. It was like 5 degrees cooler. So we did the heat pump as like subsidized heating for that space.
Take the edge off.
Yeah, which the guy was like, that's genius. And it's like, I said, yeah, it's going to be the same price too, whether you buy a heat pump or an air conditioner. So which one do you want? He was like, well, give me the heat pump. It's no brainer. So then I had to they made.
And then he's pissed because his circuit's breaking and he doesn't understand why. And
yeah,
you had to resell the whole thing.
Ronnie, you sold me a unit that's not going to work. Our breaker's going to keep tripping. I said, no, Wilbur, that's not the case. The problem is we put a heat pack in you weren't supposed to get. We're going to let you keep it for free. I'm going to disable it. If you decide you want to commission it later, you can pay an electrician to commission it. Well, that makes sense.
Now,
Yeah.
now you got a heat pack for free that you're probably
Yeah.
not ever going to use, but
you can.
But you can.
He asked me that too. He said, Ronnie, do you see any reason for me to ever hook the heat pack in? I said, well, if you'd have bought the 5-speed, I would have said yes, because you could have used it for reheat dehumidification. But since you didn't, I'm going to say no. Just leave it alone.
Right.
And he was like, well, that's good enough. He's like, everything you've told me so far has been right. And he's like, and then I went there myself and helped him fix it. Like, because he asked me to do that. And I said, absolutely. So we got all that combed over, and I even went into the thermostat and programmed it heat pump only with no backup electric heat. That way it doesn't try to do any of that weird stuff and make the system fault out or whatever. So, but it was easier to commission it the way I did.
There's no way to give more explicit instructions.
No, I mean, it's just not that did it. Didn't care, just whatever they sent with the job, he hooked it up and didn't ask any questions.
Right.
I mean, there's a 12 2 at ground to the unit and a double 20 breaker. It's obvious not to hook a 60 amp pack to it. Yeah, he said literally it was 5 degrees cooler upstairs, Ronnie. I kicked the heat on, and he said it ran for about 5 minutes, and then I smelled like a burning smell. It tripped the breaker. And the burning smell was the new heat pack firing up.
New heat pack, yeah.
Yeah. And then he said, and then it was, as far as I knew, it was broken. The technician came out here and told me they had to run a new wire to it.
And the other jag-off install recently was them putting the ductwork in the wrong place. Did that get fixed?
That's fixed, yeah. It didn't get fixed on the day I'd liked it to get fixed. And it wasn't the person that fixed it that said they were going to fix it. But it got fixed. And
you're happy with the way it got fixed?
I am happy, and the homeowner's happy. So
okay.
It would have been easier to do it this way in the first place. It's the whole reason we moved the furnace is to put the ductwork where it was at. It was like harder for him to do it wrong.
Wow.
Yep.
So, how do you feel about? I mean, I still have the feeling that we're going to need to smooth this out some, because it's going to be hard to go yes, no, no, maybes when it comes to giving people price. What we do instead of giving people price is we help them build their ideal specification and give them a pretty good price range.
Yeah, give them a range.
And then we leave them alone and let them go get bids or think about it or whatever, so that they settle on whatever their, what do you want to call it? Final?
Their final ideal specification. Yep.
Their final specification is. And then we appreciate it if you give us the privilege of bidding last, because first of all, I get paid two ways. I get paid if you buy from us, but I also get paid if I lose the job, if I understand why. And so if I bid last and I don't get the job, I'm totally okay with it, because I'm going to understand why. Yeah. And I'll learn from it. But I also will know that you're not getting ripped off by somebody cutting corners and not telling you. So I'm not going to lose a job to somebody who's cheating you, because I'll be able to know from the bids that you share with me if they're actually bidding to the specification that's your final specification, or if they're cutting corners. I don't know. It feels like it's really close. Maybe not perfect.
Yeah, I would agree.
It's going to be hard. You're going to have, well, you'll practice with it and figure it out. I mean, it'll be nice not to have to build a whole bunch of different pricing for people, won't it?
Yeah, absolutely. If I can save a bunch of time not doing that, I mean, that's, yeah, and still get the jobs, I would love to do that. I mean, in this case, it probably saved me 30 minutes building, putting together a bunch of prices they didn't need.
Right. Right.
And I said, just plan on 20% higher next year,
Yeah.
Which again, they're okay with that. So.
Yeah. So what do y'all use for fresh air terminations and soffits? I guess that'd be an attic system.
Or if the furnace is in a closet, like in the center of the house, sometimes you got to run like a flexible duct over through a soffit, through an attic to a soffit. I try to do gable ends if possible, but if I got to do a soffit, there's a kit they sell at Johnstone. I'm trying to think of the name of it, but it's a 6-inch soffit kit and it has like a screen in it.
So Johnstone has a 6-inch soffit kit.
Yeah, they got a kit that you can use it, and I think it's white. The cap is, but it's paintable and stuff too. So,
how do you clean it? You got to get on a ladder, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hopefully it does.
You would have to do that on a gable anyway, right?
Yeah, the screen. On a gable, it looks like a big dryer vent cap without a flapper.
Right.
And the screen is big enough to where usually, I mean, it would probably take 20 years for it to get dirty enough, unless you got cottonwood or something. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Do they have dampers?
Some of them do. Some of them are open. Some of them do. Some don't. Some have like a fan motor in them, and the ones I use do not have a damper in them, and they run continuously all year. But the rate that they run at goes up and down based on temperature and humidity.
Which is why it's $3,000 instead of $800.
Oh yeah, it's got it has an ECM motor. It's adjustable from 40 to 100 CFM, and it has temperature humidity sensors in it that you can actually get an inline heater for it if you want. That's an add-on for it. So it's made by Daikin. It's a really nice ventilator. But that's why we charge $3,200 for them instead of just like a scuttle.
How much are them?
Like we get them for like $500-$600.
Okay.
Which is not terrible.
Yeah.
We buy on my Johnstone from Supply also.
Okay. Yeah, on my house, I can't remember what brand it was, but I used a powered ventilator just as along with the Haven, because when the system kicks on, it still pulls air through the ventilator anyways, and so that's like you constantly are going to get 20-ish CFM, and then when the Haven, I got the automation set up to where it has a trigger, so that way if it high VOCs, the Haven kicks the powered ventilator on, and then I basically go from 20 to 30 constantly up to 100 if needed.
Yeah,
and that's something that one, it don't have all the things that the one you're talking about does. It's just a simplified on and off type thing. But
yeah,
I mean, it was like $120, $130, something like that.
Yeah, does it have a filter and stuff in it too?
Yeah,
that's good. Yep, and they do have an inline damper you can add to this system, but I don't install it with it. I do have one lady that insisted that we installed one, and she actually ordered it and paid us to install it for her later. So, but that's just why. because she's insane. That's why. Because in the wintertime, she couldn't get her humidity high enough.
Oh, so she's turning off the fresh air?
She didn't like the 45% humidity. She wants it 60 in the house all the time.
In the winter?
Jesus.
Oh, yeah.
Did you warn her?
Oh, yeah.
And Dr.
Yeah, I did a comfort console at this house before we added the fresh air. She had no problem doing it, and then once we put the fresh air in, um, she's like, the air quality's great in the house. It's awesome to breathe in here, and just not enough humidity for me. I'm not, I'm like, that doesn't make sense, but I even went to her Infinity Control and lied to it and told it that the humidity was higher than it actually was to try to
placebo her. So she's not worried about mold.
Nope. And she's got cellulose in her attic, and when the fresh air is running, her house isn't as dusty.
Right.
I also moved her humidifier to the return, even though we normally wouldn't do that. And the reason we did is because she was getting white dust off of her humidifier pad in her bathroom. She has a bathroom run right off the supply plenum.
How'd you just diagnose that?
Well, I was out there, and she's like, I keep getting all this white dust just out of this register. So, and you turn the system on, you can see the white dust blowing out the register. So I go downstairs and I look at the humidifier, and I pull the pad out, and I'm like, is it this dust? And I dump the white dust out, and it's the same exact stuff.
Oh, no.
And she was like, I can't have that. So we can put it on the return. It may not work as well, but I said, or we can put a steam humidifier in here, and you can rock and roll and do whatever you got to do with it, as much or as little as you want.
Turn the house into a real mold farm then.
Yeah, I think a service technician recently installed a steam humidifier in that house. So,
boy,
I told her we could also install another powered humidifier. She could have two. We reused the one she had already. I moved it from the supply to the return. It was a newer, really nice Honeywell water-saving one. So,
you see this? The only thing I could find locally is a dryer fart fan termination with a backdraft damper in the wrong direction.
I mean, is it a code that it has to have a damper on like wherever he's at, or?
I wouldn't think so.
If he's having the same problems I've had before, it's just finding something to use for a fresh air intake. Because you ask any supply house, hey, like, I need a fresh air intake. They just look at you funny, and they're like, well, we have a dryer outlet.
Mars?
Will that work? And it has the damper in it. So,
and then Honeywell makes that nice electronic scuttle that you could put in, and it has a controller, or you can run it off like a Honeywell stat. But even with that being said, we wouldn't put like a flapper in the grill we put in is just like a grill with a screen in it. There's no flapper in it.
That's what I use too. I just get mine off of supplyhouse.com.
That's a lot cheaper. Yep.
Yeah, it's a cheap place to get it, and I don't have to go through the whole, dance of trying to convey to the counter guy what a fresh air intake is and what it is that I need.
Yeah, you just put the part number in, the one you got, and that's it.
Yeah.
I think Braun makes a nice one too, a nice cap. Maybe that's the one you're getting off Supply House. I don't know, but
he's worried about condensation.
The pipe goes water.
I've never had that problem.
I assume it's probably a crawl space then. But
he's saying soffit cap, so I would say it's an attic, right? I guess it could be a soffit in a crawl space. I've seen hangover soffits that are in crawl spaces.
In the winter? Huh.
Yeah.
Well, then it's probably seeing condensing temperatures in that attic.
Yeah, so the attic's not ventilated properly then, right?
The attic's heated then. You're going to have to insulate the pipe.
I only run them and we only insulate them. We never don't insulate that pipe. Inside the pipe's what he's talking about.
Well, then the pipe's colder than dew point.
Yeah, so if it's connected to the house, Ted, and it's just naturally air flowing through it, then you could have hot air and cold air mixing together.
The inside air is coming up through the duct, touching
Yeah,
the
when it's off.
Yeah.
When it's off.
Yeah.
Oh,
well,
it's backdrafting. It's backdrafting.
Yeah, you could use let's see. Let me see if I can look it up real quick. There's a kit called a scuttle kit that has like a weighted damper to where when the system kicks on, it opens it up.
Yeah, like a barometric bypass.
Yes. And I know it's called a scuttle, like SKUTTLE. Let me see if I can find one on here, and I'll add a link. But I think Supply House may have stopped selling them.
I haven't ate yet, guys. I'm gonna run. Y'all have a good night, okay?
Okay, Ronnie.
We'll see you, Ronnie.
All right, no problem. Thanks.
Let's see if I can find what I'm looking for.
So stack effect is causing the thing to backdraft.
Well, crap. I guess.
Then it gets part way up that pipe and it gets cold. The pipe gets cold.
Yeah, which Supply House doesn't carry it anymore, but this will have the part number for you if you want to ask your Supply House. And it'll have all the information for it because I've used these a few times.
Yeah, you want that scuttle down inside the house if you can get it, so that it doesn't have any kind of convective, weird convective currents occurring up into the attic. You want to stop it in the house.
Yeah, what this one is it comes with a takeoff, or it's not technically a takeoff. It's still an AT that goes onto the return duct, and then it has just a wire screen intake, and so the damper itself is at the return of wherever you're installing it at, and so when it's closed off, air can't flow from the wherever it's
conditioned air can't flow into the
the conditioned air won't get anywhere in, or it's not perfectly sealed off. Like there's a gap, but it's not going to have the same level of flow that just an open duct will have.
Run them full time. Have it run on a low setting when they're not calling, and you'll overcome that.
And for that particular kit, it is a little bit more expensive than most kits. I think it's like, I don't know, probably $140 or something, but it's a lot better made. Like it's steel, it's not cheap aluminum that's flimsy. So it is pretty nice. The only tricky part is the weight. It has like a set nut. It's got 2 set nuts, and so you have to adjust that weight to where it's the balance is to where when the system kicks on if you're wanting if you have like a low speed that you want it to be able to bring in fresh air, you've got to set it to where when this the lowest fan setting kicks on, it does open, but then when the unit shuts off, it does close. So it can be a little tricky, because you can't that's not something that you can install straight up and down or something like that, or at a 45 or something. It's got to come out 90 degrees because for that damper, that weight's got to be set just right, so that way it can actually open and close properly.
Right. Well, that's a good point to be aware of.
Yep.
If you're not running it.
Just another tool in the toolbox.
Particularly if the house is pretty humid.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, So people that are coming up with ideas for using the yes, no, no maybes at the end of the free quote for people that aren't ready to make a decision. I'm thinking we need to have little micro contracts as you're going through the educational process where they express appreciation for what you're doing. And if they say something like, oh, none of the other guys shared this information with me, you know, say, oh,
Yeah.
sounds like you appreciate this.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Sounds like you're happy I'm sharing this with you.
Yeah. I wonder, should we ask either early on or in the middle of the whole, process of just being like, do you find this useful, or do you feel like this feels like a waste of time and you just want to get a price and let's go?
Oh, that's a good way of doing it.
Just to kind of like,
have them reaffirm that, oh no, I'm appreciating this.
Yeah, kind of a negative reverse way of doing it.
Yeah, you get to the end and you should be able to help them understand that. Now, usually what we do is we have one free quote and we ask that you give us the privilege of bidding last. And the reason is other people tend to be less thorough than we are about 90% of the time. And you can tell that they're going to be less thorough if they don't provide this level of education.
Yeah.
And so they're also going to be less thorough with their install practices and their bidding practices. And, for the jobs that I found, the jobs that I lose, 90% of the time, the other contractor has cut a corner that the homeowner didn't realize was cut. And 10% of the time I lose it fair and square.
Yeah.
And by coming out last, I end up winning those 90% of the jobs because I point out that the person was cutting corners that you weren't aware of. And the 10% of the time, I learn a thing to help make my business better, even though I lost the job. Well, you guys will go out there and experiment with it some and come back and it'll get tuned to the point that it'll be good.
Yep.
Probably around the same time Eric's ready to put it into the software, which would be nice.
Yeah, hopefully so.
I think he's making good progress. Didn't get a chance to meet with him on Friday because he's getting his garage floor poured.
Oh.
Had this garage project for a long time. He raised up this 150-year-old barn. And then he poured a perimeter foundation and then put blocks down. And then he lowered the garage. But now the garage, the wooden part, is a foot or two off the ground instead of going right into the ground. And the thing's beautiful. It's really beautiful. Instead of shabby.
That's nice. Yeah. That's real nice.
It'll be good for another 150 years. He's going to use it as a garage instead of a barn. So it's going to be that house, man. They've been working on it for a decade, and it's really coming into shape. And he's still loving his Ford Lightning.
Oh, he got a Ford Lightning?
He did. He got a pretty early one.
Oh, okay.
So he's going to have all kinds of charging set up in there and what have you. How did you get your did you get your setup finished so that you can power your house with your truck?
Not yet. I've got only thing I got to do now is I got to have the power company turn power off for me to switch my feed lines into the gateway, and then run
And the meter. Okay.
Yeah, and then run my main power from the gateway to my panel, and that's
Gotcha.
all I've got to do. So
that sounds like a scheduling nightmare.
yes.
We'll see you in 6 months.
Yeah. Part of me was just kind of feeling like, oh, maybe I should just wire up a breaker into my panel and then charge up my truck to 100% and then plug in the 240 outlet, go into my breaker, and then just pull the meter myself. So then that way I don't have to be in a massive rush, and I'll have a few days of power.
Oh, that's hilarious.
On my house.
That's hilarious.
Because I could do it.
Right, and if there's no draw through that meter, you can just pop it. But
yep,
if you pull the meter, don't you have to break a key?
Yeah, I guess so.
They have some kind of a one of those little tags on there.
Yeah.
To know that you haven't messed with the meter.
Mm-hmm.
He might not be very happy with you.
Yeah, well, I guess the feeling could be mutual.
Well, what happened when you made the phone call?
Nothing's happened. It's just the power company in general is just kind of annoying. I wished I had it the other night, because I guess it's like if it rains, they're just like, oh, we're now gonna have power problems, because I was sitting in my house like just trying to watch Netflix, and it was like late at night too, and it was raining, and the power will just shut off, or it'll kind of do like a brown out. It'll come back up, but of course everything turned off, so you got to wait 2 minutes for everything to reconnect. And then by the time everything reconnects and you get back to where you was at, the power flickers off again. And it did that all night. And I'm like, this is some bullshit. And then you get your bill and you look at all the, how much power you used and what the cost is. And I'm like, where's this $120 going that isn't energy related? And it's like, oh, it's the made up fees that they can just kind of fictitiously throw in there to jack up the price.
Reliability.
Yeah. And so I'm just like, I hate these people. And it would be so fun just to be able to go off grid, or at least have a truck to have like a battery backup for when it does stupid stuff. I just go turn my main breaker off. And
well, actually, you could just do a generator circuit.
Yeah.
And plug it into the generator circuit in the meantime.
Yeah, I could. But right now, I don't have any of that set up, so I just have to sit and twiddle my thumbs and cuss at the power company
for not calling you. Did you call them and they didn't call you back, or what's?
No, I've not called them yet. I'm kind of interested to see what they say, because I don't technically have an electrical license, and so I'm kind of wondering if they're gonna give me.
Oh, well, you need to have an electrician.
I don't know. I've never done this to know. If they do try to do some bullshit like that, I will 100% cut that key and pull the meter. And then I'll leave them a little note with just I'll make me a little drawing of just flipping them off for if they do come and look at it. I'll be like, I might get charged, but I'm going to cuss you in the process.
Right.
Don't tell me what to do.
Oh, my goodness. And you have to get into that meter box, don't you, to disconnect?
Yeah.
You could disconnect from the main panel, because all you need to do is have the thing between the meter and the main panel, right? Or does it go in the meter box?
The gateway basically replaces your main panel. So you're going to move your main service disconnect is going to become inside of the gateway. And then your gateway would empower what was your main panel.
Oh, and you're not going to want to pull that wire out of the box while it's live.
Oh no. That's why I got to pull the. I'll have to have power.
That's why you
shut
want
off.
to pull the meter. I got it. Okay.
Yeah, and it's probably going to be a pain to run. There's a good chance I may have to rip sheetrock up because luckily my panel is in my garage, so.
Right. Well, it doesn't sound like it's going to be done before I get there. So it might be a project you and I can work on together.
Hopefully I can get it done by then if we've got, let's see. Yeah, I'm not sure. See, I don't live in any city limits, so that's what I don't know. It's the area that I'm in is kind of notorious for there being like there's not really many permits you can actually pull. So I'm kind of curious to see what they even say. I'm hoping it'll just be, they'll be like, okay, we'll assign, whatever times, and then I'll just go, okay, well, when whatever time it is that it's going to be shut down, I'm just going to make sure that my truck's fully charged. And when I get everything turned back on, my truck can power the house until they come back out and turn it back on. That's the goal. It's just what I'm not sure about, since I've not done this before. I'm not sure if they're going to be like, do they have someone to sign off on it or some dumb stuff? I don't know. Could be very simple, but I mean, it's something that with the right person could be a major headache when it shouldn't be.
Yeah, so probably need to talk to the right person when you make the phone call.
Yeah.
Hope that you get to the right person.
Yeah. Which I'm going to start out with just being like, I'm not going to say I'm an electrical contractor. I'm just going to say, hey, like I'm a contractor, I have my own business. I just need someone to tell them what I'm doing. I just need someone to come disconnect power for me so I can get these main feeders swapped over and turn back on, and hope that that's good enough.
Right. What's the weather like down there?
It's been pretty good here lately. It's been, I mean, it fluctuates 65 to 75 during the day so far.
Okay, and how cold at night?
Not very cold. I think the lowest I've seen it get in the past few weeks is 50.
Okay.
So let's see. Right now it is 66 outside.
Oh wow!
And it's been dark for almost 4 hours.
Yeah, it's 50 here.
So far, let me check the weather to see if we got any funky thing going on. Yeah, it looks like it's probably going to get about as cold as it's been in a while towards the end of this week, which is going to be mid-30s on the low and mid-50s on the high. That's going to suck. But yeah, so far we're hanging in there with decent weather.
You saw that truck will charge at 500?
I did see that.
Holy cow.
That would be amazing. Talk about cutting your I wonder what I mean, obviously if they're rolling out chargers that can do it, they've obviously accounted for the batteries can handle that, but that has to be a stressor on the battery. So I wonder difference in, 250 kilowatts.
Slow it down.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
it'll be the taper curve.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, it'll definitely do that. I just wonder, like, degradation wise.
Oh,
how much does that? Because I mean, that's definitely going to be a lot more of you're ramming.
You would think it might be, but
yeah,
maybe the pack's big enough.
Maybe so. Now they just make the chargers pull through, and it'll be good to go.
Make them pull through, and bother your uncle.
Yep, it definitely is.
All right, guys.
Well, we ready to end it?
I think so. Thanks for coming, Jason.
Yep. Thanks, Jason.
See you in 2 weeks.
Yep. See y'all in 2 weeks. And